Story 1. The Intern. It was 2011. I was 17, a typical high school senior focused on exams and secretly hoping for a sweeping romantic story to happen in my life. My school was affiliated with a university, so every fall we had student teachers come in to complete their internships. Usually they were young women, and their stays lasted 2 or 3 months depending on the subject. But that year was different. A new intern arrived, a very handsome man in his mid-20s. He taught math, and I later found out he also worked as a model in our city. He had this effortless charm and confidence. Although he didn't teach my class, at least half the girls in school had a crush on him. Honestly, the whole school seemed obsessed. I wasn't immune. Every time I passed him in the hallway, I'd smile, trying to catch his attention. To me, he looked like a real-life Prince Charming. With each passing day, I became more infatuated, and I even started to believe he might like me back. And then, something happened. Something I wish never had. One evening, I received a message from an empty social media profile. It was him. He said he had been watching me, that he thought I was beautiful, and wanted to get to know me. It felt like a dream come true. He asked me all sorts of questions, favorite movie, where I lived, and we soon discovered we lived in the same neighborhood. That night we chatted for hours. He even suggested we flick our lights on and off so we could see each other through our windows. It was romantic in a strange way. Eventually he asked me out. I agreed, but decided to keep communication online for a while. I was shy and needed time. That's when things turned uncomfortable. He started saying we were meant to be together, that he knew it the moment he saw me. He told me I needed guidance, that my dreams of a big city career were wrong. A woman should stay home and care for her husband and children. According to him, it was fate that brought us together. So I had no reason to look elsewhere in life. He started sending me daily Bible verses and strange religious messages offering education. Quickly, the romantic dream faded. He became overbearing, and I realized I didn't like him anymore. Then came the scariest part. Just 3 or 4 days after our first chat, he showed up at my apartment building and asked the concierge for my flat number. He remembered I lived on the top floor. Thankfully, she didn't let him in. Later, he messaged me saying he had wanted to surprise me and meet my parents. That's when I realized this wasn't just weird, it was dangerous. I told him I needed a break and blocked him, but he didn't stop. He began following me home from school, first to the bus stop, and later all the way to my front door. I told my friends and they began walking with me. That only seemed to make him angrier. At some point, he got my phone number. During his last week at the school, I started receiving disturbing texts like, "I'm in the school building. Run and hide, I bet you're scared, hiding in the girls' bathroom." The worst moment came after a short break in the harassment. I came home from school and the concierge told me he had come by again and left a box for me. Inside were chocolates and a treat for my dog. He texted that if I opened the box, he would leave me alone. I didn't trust it. I peeked inside, then threw it away. That was when I finally told my mom everything. Up until then, she only knew I had a crush on an intern. Once she heard the whole story, she took immediate action. She called him and warned that if he didn't stop, she would report him to the university and the school administration. She told him he could lose everything: his internship, his degree, his reputation. I wish I could say that was the end, but it wasn't. He graduated in June and started messaging me again, even stalking me according to my grandmother. But by then, I had already been accepted into a big university in the city and moved away. So to the creepy intern, if I ever come back to my hometown, I hope we never cross paths again. Story 2, Matt. This story begins when I was in 4th grade. I was about 9 years old. Because I was younger than most of my classmates, I didn't have many friends and usually kept to myself during recess. I'd often bring a book outside and read in my favorite little corner of the playground, a quiet, overgrown patch near a large bush and the fence. It was peaceful, and barely anyone ever went there. One day, while reading with my back to the bush, I heard a rustling sound behind me. I figured it was a small animal. Squirrels and chipmunks sometimes passed through. But then I heard heavy breathing and felt something tugging on my pigtails. Startled, I turned around and there was a boy crouched low in the space between the bush and the fence. His face was mostly hidden by leaves and his hand was reaching toward me. I screamed and ran to the teachers nearby. I didn't explain what happened. I was a shy kid, but from then on I spent recess near the adults. Later that year, I made a new friend named Matt. He was also a bit of an outsider, and we became close after being assigned to the same reading group. At first he seemed friendly, but I soon noticed something was off. He was overly clingy and always came up with excuses to be near me or touch me. But I didn't have many other friends, so I ignored the discomfort. Then one day, Matt told me he liked me. I didn't know how to respond. I stayed silent. Apparently he took that as encouragement. That evening he called my house. My mom handed me the phone, saying it was a classmate. I went upstairs to talk in private. I barely got out a hello before Matt launched into a bizarre conversation, talking about things no fourth grader should be thinking about. He mentioned wanting to run away together and start a family someday. I was horrified. I didn't say anything and started avoiding him at school after that. He didn't take it well. He began glaring at me from across the room, acting hostile and bitter. Eventually, my family moved to a new school. The timing couldn't have been better. By 6th grade, I had a new phone. I gave my number to a close friend named Clara, one of the few people I stayed in touch with from my old school. A few months later, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I answered anyway. I froze. It was Matt. "Hey baby, I missed you. Why did you leave me?" he said. I hung up immediately, blocked the number and called Clara in a panic. She told me what had happened. Matt had asked to borrow her phone after school, claiming he needed to call his mom. He then used the phone to find my contact and copied the number onto his arm. Even after blocking that number, the calls continued. Week after week, different numbers. He'd leave multiple voicemails each time, saying strange and unsettling things. When I eventually changed phones, the calls finally stopped. I thought it was all behind me until freshman year of high school. Some students from my old school were now in my grade, and one day I asked about Matt. A boy named Harry told me what had happened. Matt had been expelled. Apparently, his behavior had escalated. There were reports of him violating other students' boundaries and making others uncomfortable. And then it hit me. The memory from 4th grade, the boy hiding in the bush, trying to reach through the leaves, that had been Matt. I hadn't recognized him then, but it all lined up. To Matt, wherever you are, let's never meet again. Story 3. The School Built on Bones. When I was younger, my family moved around a lot. We followed whatever work my dad could find, so I never stayed in one place too long. I didn't mind. As long as we had each other, we had a sense of home. One of those moves brought us to a tiny town in central Louisiana. It was so isolated that my northern accent confused people. Some even mistook it for a speech impediment. But the town itself was beautiful. The buildings had a vintage charm and the locals were friendly. The school, however, was a different story. On my first day, I was walking down the hall toward my new classroom, hoping to make friends. But something felt wrong. As I walked, I could feel subtle bumps under my feet, even though the floor looked perfectly flat. And it wasn't just the sensation, it was something else. A presence. I had always been sensitive to things I couldn't explain, especially the presence of those who had passed on. Graveyards, in particular, overwhelmed me. Being surrounded by that kind of energy was too much, and now it felt like that same energy was under my feet. From that day on, every time I walked through those halls, I saw things, shadows that moved where nothing should be, and fleeting images just out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes they were vague, other times they were as clear as the living. Some looked peaceful, others didn't. But the worst part wasn't what I saw, it was what I heard. Voices, whispers, chatter that never stopped. It followed me through every hallway, filled every corner. I tried to block it out with prayer just to have a moment of peace, but it never lasted long. Then came the day of the tornado drill. By some strange coincidence, or maybe something else, The lights went out just as we were all lined up in the hallway. I lifted my head to look around, and they were everywhere. Figures. Some looked like students or teachers. Others were not. Some were badly disfigured, their appearance frozen in the moment of some past tragedy. I buried my head between my arms and stayed completely still until the lights returned. After that, I never saw them so clearly again, but the image stayed burned into my memory. Only later, after we left that town, did I learn the truth. The school had been built over a cemetery, one that was nearly 200 years old. The land beneath. That school was home to everyone from children to farmers, and even darker histories. I was relieved we only stayed there for a few months. I didn't form any friendships that would tempt me to return, and honestly, I hope I never step into another school like that again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more real-life encounters with the unexplained, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Got a story of your own? Share it in the comments or send it in. It might just be featured in a future video. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and don't forget to look over your shoulder.